History Unlocked. I'm Mr MacAulay. Today, we're diving into what might be the most iconic period in all of ancient Egyptian history, the Old Kingdom, also known as the Age of Pyramids. We're talking roughly 2686 to 2181 BCE, about 500 years when ancient Egypt reached heights of architectural achievement that still blow our minds today. If you've been following this series, we've covered how geography made Egypt possible and how the early pharaohs unified the country and established divine kingship. But today we're going to be exploring what happened when those god kings decided to build monuments that would literally last forever. And I mean forever. The Great Pyramids of Giza were built over 4,500 years ago, and it's still standing. For perspective, that pyramid was already ancient when Julius Caesar visited Egypt. It was older to the Romans than the Romans are to us. That's the kind of built to last we're talking about here. But here's the thing. The pyramids weren't just impressive buildings. They were the physical manifestation of an entire worldview about life, death, power, and the relationship between humans and gods. Today we're going to explore not just how they built these incredible monuments, but why they built them and what they meant to ancient Egyptian society. The Old Kingdom began when Egypt had finally figured out how to be Egypt. The unification wars were over, the governmental states were established, and the country was experiencing unprecedented prosperity and stability. Think about it this way. Egypt in the Old Kingdom was like a startup, a new business that's just gone public. Suddenly got a massive amount of investment and has all these resources to spend on new projects. The Nile's reliable floods were producing huge agricultural surpluses, trade networks were bringing in wealth from across the known world, and the pharaonic government had become incredibly efficient at organizing large-scale projects. The third dynasty pharaoh Djoser kicked things off around 2670 BCE by commissioning something the world had never seen before. A massive stone building that reached toward the heavens. But not just any stone building. A step pyramid at Saqqara that was over 200 feet tall and made entirely of carefully cut limestone blocks. Before this, the most impressive building in the world were probably mud brick palaces or temples, but Djoser's architect, a brilliant guy named Imhotep, said, check this out, and invented a monumental stone architecture. We're talking about a technological and artistic revolution that happened in a single generation. Imhotep was not just an architect. He was a physician, an engineer, an astronomer, and a high priest. The Egyptians thought so highly of him that they later worshipped him as a god, and honestly, when you look at what he accomplished, you can understand why. The step pyramid was just the beginning, though, and over the next few generations, Egyptian architects and engineers refined their techniques until they achieved what many considered to be the pinnacle of human architectural achievement. The true smooth-sided pyramid. The progression is fascinating to follow. So after Djoser's step pyramid, we get pharaohs like Sneferu, who experimented with different pyramid shapes. Sneferu built not one, not two, but 3 major pyramids, including the famous bent pyramid, where they had to change the angle halfway up because they realized it was getting too steep and might collapse. Think of these early pyramid builders as Egypt's version of the space race. Each pharaoh trying to outdo his predecessor, pushing the boundaries of what was technically possible. The engineers were learning on the job, making mistakes, solving problems, and gradually perfecting their techniques. Well, then came Khufu, Sneferu's son, who around 2580 BCE commissioned what would become the most famous building in all of human history, the Great Pyramid of Giza. This thing is mind-blowing, even by today's standards. We're talking about a structure that used over 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2.5 and 15 tons. The pyramid originally stood at 481 feet tall. That's a 48-story skyscraper made of solid stone. The base covers 13 acres. It was the tallest human-made structure in the world for over 3,800 years. But what's even more impressive than its size is its precision. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of just 3/60ths of a degree. The base is level to within just 2.1 centimeters. These tolerances are so tight that modern construction equipment would still have trouble matching them. Now, you might be wondering, why pyramids? Why not build palaces or cities or something useful for living people? Well, the answer takes us deep into the Egyptian beliefs about death, divinity, and the afterlife. To really understand pyramid construction, you have to understand that ancient Egyptians didn't see death the way that we do. For us, death is usually the end of the story. But for ancient Egyptians, death was just a transition into a different kind of existence. And not just any existence. If you were prepared properly, death was the gateway to becoming fully divine. This was especially important for the pharaohs, who were already considered to be living gods. When a pharaoh died, he needed to successfully make the journey to the afterlife, so he could continue protecting and guiding Egypt from the realm of the gods. If the pharaoh's transition failed, it wasn't just bad for him, it was catastrophic for the entire kingdom. The pyramid served multiple functions in this process. First, it was a tomb designed to protect the pharaoh's body forever. Ancient Egyptians believed you needed your physical body in the afterlife, so preservation was crucial. The pyramid's massive stone construction and complex internal passages were like the ultimate security system designed to keep tomb robbers out for all of eternity. But the pyramid was more than just a fancy grave. It was a machine for resurrection. The pyramid's shape was deeply symbolic. It represented the primordial mound that emerged from the waters of chaos at the beginning of creation. By placing the pharaoh's body inside a pyramid, the Egyptians were symbolically recreating the moment of creation and giving the dead king the power to be reborn. The pyramid also served as a kind of spiritual lighthouse. Its polished white limestone sides, most of that casing is now gone, but originally pyramids gleamed like mirrors, could be seen for miles across the Egyptian landscape. Every time an ancient Egyptian looks at a pyramid, they were reminded of the pharaoh's divine power and his promise to protect them, even in death. Okay, so now we understand why they wanted to build the pyramids. But how did they actually do it? Well, this is where the Old Kingdom gets really, really impressive, because pyramid construction required solving logistical problems that would challenge even most modern project managers. Let's start with the workforce. For years, Hollywood movies have shown slaves being whipped to build the pyramids, but archaeological evidence tells a completely different story. The pyramid builders were skilled workers who lived in purpose-built villages, ate meat regularly, which was a luxury in ancient times, and received medical care when they were injured. We're talking about a workforce of probably 10,000 to 20,000 people during peak construction seasons. And these would have included quarrymen who would have cut the stone blocks, transporters who moved them to the construction site, masons who would have fitted them into place, engineers who designed the internal passages, artists who decorated the chambers, and administrators who coordinated the whole massive operation. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed entire cities built just to support pyramid construction. These weren't just temporary camps, they were sophisticated urban centres with bakeries that could produce thousands of loaves of bread daily, breweries, medical facilities, and housing for workers and their families. The stone itself came from quarries that could be dozens of miles away. Limestone came from quarries that were quite near Giza, but the granite for the internal chambers was quarried in Aswan. That's over 500 miles to the south. Those granite blocks, some weighing 50 tons or more, had to be loaded onto boats, floated down the Nile during the flood season, then somehow transported to the pyramid site and lifted into place. I mean, speaking of lifting, how do you raise a multi-ton stone block 400 feet into the air without cranes or modern machinery? Well, we think the Egyptians probably used a combination of ramps and levers. Pure human muscle power. Some theories suggest spiral ramps that were wrapped around the outside of the pyramid as it was being built, whereas others propose internal ramps within the pyramid structure itself. But here's something most people don't realize. The pyramids weren't built in isolation. Each pyramid was the centerpiece of a vast religious complex that could cover hundreds of acres. A typical pyramid complex included the main pyramid for the pharaoh, smaller pyramids for queens, mastaba tombs for the nobles and officials, a mortuary temple where priests performed daily rituals for the dead king, a causeway connecting the mortuary temple to a valley temple near the Nile, and sometimes even a solar boat buried nearby to help the pharaoh navigate the afterlife. The Giza complex where the Great Pyramid stands actually contains 3 major pyramids, one each for pharaohs Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, plus the famous Sphinx. Dozens of smaller pyramids and tombs, and the remains of several temples and ceremonial buildings too. This wasn't just a cemetery, it was a sacred landscape designed to facilitate the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife and provide a place where his cult could continue forever. Priests would perform daily rituals at these complexes for centuries after the pharaoh's death, ensuring the god king continued to receive offerings and prayers. Building the pyramids required more than just moving stones around. It required creating entirely new systems for organizing, feeding, and managing massive workforces. In many ways, pyramid construction drove innovations in administration and logistics that influenced Egyptian society for centuries. The pyramid builders developed sophisticated techniques for quarrying stone, including the use of copper tools, wooden levers, and controlled fires to split rocks along natural fault lines. They invented new methods for transporting heavy loads, probably including the use of lubricated sledges and rolling logs. They also had to solve unprecedented supply chain problems. How do you feed 20,000 workers every day for decades? Recent excavations have revealed evidence of massive bread production facilities, cattle pens that could hold hundreds of animals, and storage facilities for grain and other supplies. The organizational charts for pyramid construction would have put modern corporations to shame. There were overseers for different types of workers, specialists responsible for specific aspects of construction, quality control inspectors who checked the work, and record keepers who tracked everything from worker attendance to material deliveries. We can't really talk about Old Kingdom monuments without discussing one of the most mysterious, the Great Sphinx of Giza. This massive sculpture, 240 feet long, 66 feet tall, was carved from a single piece of limestone bedrock, probably during the reign of Khafre around 2500 BCE. The Sphinx has the body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh, probably Khafre himself, but it represents more than just royal power. It's a guardian figure positioned to protect the sacred pyramid complex from evil spirits and tomb robbers. What's fascinating about the Sphinx is how it demonstrates the Egyptians' mastery of large-scale sculpture. It wasn't built from separate blocks like the pyramids. It was carved by removing everything that wasn't the Sphinx from a massive limestone outcrop. The precision and artistry required for this kind of subtractive sculpture is incredibly difficult. The Sphinx also shows us how the Egyptians thought about integrating their monuments with the natural landscape rather than imposing artificial structures on the environment. They worked with the existing geology to create something that seems to emerge naturally from the bedrock. The later Old Kingdom pyramids contain some of the oldest religious writings in human history, the pyramid texts. These aren't just random inscriptions, they're sophisticated theological documents that provide our best window into ancient Egyptian beliefs about death and the afterlife. The pyramid texts include spells designed to help the deceased pharaoh navigate the afterlife, hymns praising various gods, and detailed descriptions of the pharaoh's journey to join the gods in the heavens. They're like a spiritual GPS system for the dead king, providing turn-by-turn directions for achieving immortality. These texts reveal that pyramid construction wasn't just about building impressive monuments, it was about creating a spiritual machine that could transform a dead human into a living god. Every aspect of pyramid design, from the orientation to the internal passages to the burial chamber itself, was designed to facilitate this transformation. The religious significance of pyramids extended beyond just the pharaoh. The pyramid complexes employed hundreds of priests, whose job was to maintain the pharaoh's cult forever. These priests performed daily rituals, made offerings, and recited prayers to ensure the dead king continued to protect Egypt in the afterlife. But building the pyramids, it wasn't just a religious activity. It was a massive economic undertaking that shaped Egyptian society in very profound ways. Modern economists estimate that pyramid construction probably consumed 10 to 20% of Egypt's entire economic output during peak building periods. This had huge implications for Egyptian society. Pyramid construction created thousands of jobs, from skilled artisans to unskilled labourers. It drove innovations in engineering, mathematics, and organisational management. It created entire industries dedicated to quarrying, transportation, and specialised construction. But pyramid building also demonstrated Egypt's incredible wealth and economic sophistication. Only a society with massive agricultural surpluses and efficient tax collection systems could afford to dedicate such enormous resources to non-productive monuments. The economic impact extended beyond just the construction period. Pyramid complexes required permanent staffs or priests, guards, and maintenance workers. They owned vast agricultural estates to fund ongoing operations. In many ways, the pyramids have become economic engines that continued generating activity and employment for centuries. But the Old Kingdom wasn't just about building big monuments. It was also a golden age of Egyptian art, literature, and culture. The wealth and stability provided by successful pyramid-building pharaohs created conditions for artistic achievement that influenced Egyptian culture for millennia. Old Kingdom artists developed the distinctive Egyptian artistic style we still recognize today. Figures shown in the profile with frontal torsos, hierarchical scaling where important people are shown larger than the less important ones, and the use of art to tell stories about religious and political themes. The tomb paintings and sculptures from Old Kingdom pyramid complexes are masterpieces of ancient art. The famous statue of Khafre, carved from a single piece of diorite, demonstrates technical skill that wasn't surpassed for thousands of years. The intricate reliefs in mastaba tombs show daily life in ancient Egypt with incredible detail and artistry. Old Kingdom literature also flourished. Texts like the Instructions of Tahotep provided moral and practical guidance that remained influential throughout Egyptian history. The period saw the development of sophisticated forms of poetry, religious hymns, and instructional literature. But all good things must come to an end, and the Old Kingdom was no exception. By around 2200 BCE, the system that had produced the Great Pyramids was beginning to break down. Several factors contributed to the Old Kingdom's decline. Climate change led to lower Nile floods and reduced agricultural productivity. The massive costs of pyramid construction may have strained the royal treasury, and regional governors began asserting more independence from central authority. But perhaps most importantly, the very success of pyramid building may have contributed to the system's downfall. As pyramid complexes grew larger and more elaborate, they required ever-increasing resources to maintain. Eventually, the economic burden just became unsustainable. The end of the Old Kingdom wasn't a sudden collapse. It was more like a gradual transition as power shifted from the pharaoh back to regional rulers, and the unified kingdom fragmented once again into competing territories. Despite the Old Kingdom's eventual decline, the monuments it produced continued to influence Egyptian culture for thousands of years. Later pharaohs built their own pyramids, though never quite matching the scale and precision of the Old Kingdom examples. And pyramid symbolism remained central to Egyptian religious thought. The pyramids also became symbols of Egypt itself for foreign visitors. Ancient Greek and Roman tourists travelled to see the pyramids, just like modern tourists do today. The pyramids were already considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world over 2,000 years ago. But the real legacy of the Old Kingdom pyramid building goes beyond just tourism or cultural symbolism. The techniques developed for pyramid construction influenced architecture and engineering for centuries. The organizational systems created for managing pyramid workforces became models for other large-scale projects. Most importantly, the pyramids demonstrated humanity's ability to conceive and execute projects of incredible ambition and complexity. They showed that with sufficient organization, resources, and determination, humans could create works that would literally last forever. Even today, 4,500 years after they were built, the pyramids continue to surprise us. Modern technology keeps revealing new secrets about how they were constructed and what they meant to their builders. Recent discoveries have revealed previously unknown chambers inside the Great Pyramid. Ground-penetrating radar has found evidence of additional structures around pyramid complexes. Computer modeling has helped us understand how the ancient Egyptians achieved such incredible precision in their construction. Archaeological excavations continue to uncover worker villages, tool workshops, and other facilities that support our understanding of pyramid construction as a massive, well-organized industrial operation rather than a mysterious undertaking by a lost civilization. These ongoing discoveries remind us that ancient Egyptians weren't aliens or recipients of a lost technology, but they were incredibly skilled, organized, and ambitious humans who pushed the boundaries of what was possible with the tools and knowledge available to them. And what can we learn today from the Old Kingdom and its incredible monuments? Well, first, that humans are capable of extraordinary achievements when they combine clear vision, adequate resources, and sophisticated organization. The pyramids also teach us about the power of long-term thinking. The pharaohs who commissioned these monuments were planning for eternity, not just their own lifetimes. They created institutions and systems designed to last forever, and in many cases, they succeeded. Finally, the Old Kingdom demonstrates the importance of technological innovation and continuous improvement. Each generation of pyramid builders learned from their predecessors, refined their techniques, and pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The pyramids stand today as a testament to human ambition, ingenuity, and the desire to create something that transcends our individual morality. They remind us that sometimes the most impossible seeming projects turn out to not just be possible but transformative for entire civilizations. When you see pictures of the Great Pyramids, remember that you're looking at the product of one of humanity's first great technological and organizational revolutions, a moment when ancient people decided to build something that would last forever and actually succeed. That's the real miracle of the Old Kingdom. Not that they built impossibly large monuments, but they created systems capable of turning impossible dreams into an eternal reality. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Until next time.